Hey there. Happy Friday. Welcome to Leadership Lunch Chat. My name is Jennifer Wilson, and I'm here with my good friend, Amy Vetter. And we're here to talk about leadership issues facing the profession and really ourselves in life and across the globe, all leadership all the time. And with us today is a really super special guest, Sydney Marshburn. And Sydney and I met at church. Sydney has the most beautiful singing voice and writes music and plays the guitar and maybe other instruments she can tell us about. And she built a relationship with my mother at church, and my mother was like, "Man, this young lady," and she was a teenager maybe at the time, is so amazing. And so I got to know Sydney through my mom, and then Sydney has been faced with a disease that she's going to share a little bit with, and it has caused issues for her in life that include her losing her leg last year, and or lower leg. And I have watched Sydney. She moved away from us, and so I couldn't see her in person anymore. But we stayed connected in social media and have prayed for her and witnessed her journey and seen unstoppability and perseverance and positivity and love and hope and faith and transparency and honesty. And she's just been amazing. And so we wanted Sydney to come and tell her story and tell a little bit about how she's approached some of the challenges that she's had and just have a conversation about perseverance and unstoppability today. So welcome, Sydney. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Like Jen mentioned, I am an amputee. I'm an above knee amputee, and I have been for about 14 months, a little under now. So this is all, excuse me, this is all relatively new to me. Having an amputation is not an ideal surgery for a 22-year-old, and I don't think it's an ideal surgery for any age. However, with my medical background, everything fell together. For some context, back in 2017, I was struggling with spondylolisthesis, which is not only just a mouthful to say, but it's a spinal disorder where your vertebra slips forward onto the bone below it. During this time, I was also diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And that is caused by a defect in collagen. It's a connective tissue disorder. I like to use the analogy of people with EDS being held together with chewed up old bubble gum, whereas people without EDS are held together with Gorilla Glue. So if that helps you picture some of the things that were going on, please use that analogy. My ongoing battle with EDS and its many comorbidities caused severe vertebral instability. And so adding that to the spondylolisthesis made it so that a spinal fusion was necessary. And the lumbar surgery did everything it was supposed to do. However, it also caused a rare complication in my left leg, which is called complex regional pain syndrome, or CRPS for short. And CRPS, the main symptom of that is burning. This constant burning, you're burning 24/7, and it was burning me alive from the inside out. Because of the CRPS, I would get constant infections that would last 7 months each, and it was made worse by the Ehlers-Danlos. Every time I dislocated or hurt myself on my left side, it would result in a flare that would last for months. This happened in a continuous cycle for a little over 4 years. And it got to the point where I could not sleep in my own bed or wear pants because having anything touch it made it burn more and caused more blisters. And the blisters would be like the size of my palm. So I had to be really careful not to pop them everywhere. Doctors initially dismissed me. And, they didn't want to help me or they couldn't help me. But eventually the blisters and the infection and the swelling, it all became too intense, even for them. So they tried every kind of treatment possible, but to no avail. And I was told that I was going to have to accept being in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. Ultimately, my leg started to decay from infection and it started to spread rapidly. I was fast-tracked to a surgeon to talk about amputation. And let me tell you, going into that appointment, I expected to have to prove how sick I was because that had been the story of my life when it came to seeing doctors. And I looked over at my mom, who had flown in from Italy to be with me at the appointment, and she was ready to step up and be my advocate in case I emotionally shut down, which had a tendency to happen. However, when my surgeon walked in, this time was completely different. He looked at my leg and then looked down at his notes and then looked back up at my leg again and verbally confirmed it absolutely needs to go. He then went on to explain what a lower limb amputation entails for him in the operating room and for me as the patient. I was completely blindsided, however, when he came over and used his hand to show where he would have to cut on my leg. It was above the knee, and he said it had to go as soon as possible. At that time, my body was still physically recovering from 3 separate neurosurgeries spanning back 11 months prior. I had my skull bolted down to my C3 vertebrae 11 months before I lost my leg, and then I had my spinal cord detethered only 3 months before I lost my leg. When I graduated from college in August of 2020, it just seemed like it was surgery after surgery, and my body was exhausted. But after hearing the news that my leg had to go, we had 36 hours before I was admitted for surgery. And at that time, I was heartbroken that it was coming up so fast and I didn't have a choice. And all of these things started, buzzing around in my head. And upon reflection and looking back, I knew that if I had more time, it would have consumed me. I would have done a countdown and, 2 weeks left with a leg, 4 weeks, however long the time was, and it would have just consumed me. And that's not a way to go through life. So I'm so thankful it happened the way it did, but I wasn't at the time. When I arrived at the hospital that day for surgery, I remember propelling myself in my wheelchair and just trying to go forward because I knew it had to be done. But there was that part in me that wanted to make a U-turn and just go back home, lay in bed, and let the infection do what the infection did. And, I understood once I got past those double doors to the entrance, that was going to be the last time. There was no backing out after that. And that was when all of the emotions started, coming in, good and bad. And at that point, it was probably a lot of bad, probably outweighing the good. And one of the hardest things I ever had to do was to continue making that trek up to those double doors, knowing that part of me is not going to make it back out. And that's a lot to think about when you're my age, and I think maybe when you're older too. But I remember it was like maybe 60 yards, less than a football field away from the hospital. And I remember how the sun was beating down that day for some reason. And it was actually burning the infection and all of that. But I really wanted to remember how it felt because I knew that was the last time in my life that I would ever feel that. And that's when the silent tears started falling. And it was hard. And I was so thankful for the people in my support system, from my parents to my fiance to friends and family. They understood that my situation had become life-threatening and they would not let me back out. At that point, my leg had gone septic. And I was the only one who didn't quite grasp the gravity of the situation. I wanted to save my leg. And that was a feeling I never thought I would have to go through, because at night, with the CRPS, I would be sitting up and crying and just yelling out and praying to God, please just take this off of me. And to this day, I still struggle with the fact of, does God think I'm ungrateful? Because, I'm sad that I lost my limb, but I essentially got what I prayed for. And this is something I'm still in therapy for, and I've had to get spiritual help for, but I digress. There was a moment in the hospital after my amputation that physical therapy came in, and it was the day after. And that was the first time we took the blanket off, and I really got a good look at, it was all bandaged up, so I couldn't see everything, but at what the shape was and how it looked. And I remember taking a deep breath and thinking something along the lines of, well, my leg's not coming back. I can let this hinder me, or I can move forward with it. And I chose the latter. And I still consciously have to choose the latter every day because there are bad days, right? And I know healing is not linear, but with the knowledge and the hope of things will get better, the bad days won't be every single day. It does get me through.
Hey, Sid.
Yes.
So, that choice to move forward, like I can choose to sort of wallow or I can choose to move forward. I feel like I've witnessed you do that all the way along. Like you went away to school, like you graduated high school and you had all these complications and you needed to do the spinal surgery and all of that, but you went to Tennessee to school. You were like, yeah, I'm going to have the traditional experience non-traditionally. You graduated school in what looks like normal time. You pressed. You were always pressing for what I'm going to call a modicum of normalcy in the face of some really serious obstacles. And this too, right? Once you had the amputation, again, major obstacles. But what I find amazing, just keeping it together and telling your story and being here is amazing. But all that you've accomplished with these barriers. And I had a thought, and it may be gnarly here, but I just want to say it. And the thought I had was like, wow. And people sit around and, complain about busy season or something, like the stuff we complain about in our lives without the perspective of challenges that many people face that are so much greater and so much more personal and so much like physical pain, mental anguish. Anyway, I just think our audience, it might be helpful a little bit for us to try to put in perspective your journey.
Yeah. And I think, it's so inspiring what you've gone through and the decisions you've had to make. And, they're not fun decisions to have to make. And I think it is important we've invited you on to inspire because you are inspirational. And we've been talking a lot about perseverance, and you definitely are a model of that. And, one of the things you said, you digress, but I think it's important, is that you go to therapy, is that you have a support system and a community. And some people don't have family to support them, or, whatever it is of hard things that are going on. And we still have to go through our day. We still want to go to college. We still want to drive the career that we want. We still want to have the family that we want to have, or, whatever those dreams are that we manifest. But there's always going to be roadblocks in the dreams that we manifest. And, it is important. And I do want to say that, one of the things that I talk about a lot is to not compare pain. We're using you as an example of inspiration, but everybody, it could be minor, it could be major. But in each individual's life, we all go through things that we have to make a choice. And you said that so well, is I have a choice to wallow and I have a choice to be sad. And doesn't mean I won't have moments of being sad. I'm allowed to have those moments, but I have a choice to move forward, have a vision, and keep living my life, and then redefining what that looks like. And I wanted to ask you, I really, it's one of those things in my life that, until lately, I've really heard it being defined, but I did it without intentionally doing it. And that is manifesting. And I would love to hear what that manifesting process is for you, that every day when you wake up, that vision, of what helps you persevere. What is it that you believe that, what is your purpose, and what is it that you want to create with all of this?
Right. That's a great question. I think when it comes to waking up every morning and choosing to not let what I'm going through define me or define my day. I think, well, I've become very accustomed to, and this was before I even got sick, of long-term goals, right? I have the short-term goals and the long-term goals. And for me, the long-term goal is to make Team USA's Paralympic team, right? So I have...
And what do you want to...
So in January, we'll find out if the LA 2028 games have water polo. And if they do, then that's how I'm going to go around with
Good
it.
for you.
But if not, I'm going to try all of the sports until one sticks, because I was a swimmer growing up, and I've realized for myself that I don't think I would always be unconsciously comparing myself to who I was when I had all my limbs and not a lot of hardware. And for me, I don't think I could get past that. But I know people who do, who go right back into their sport like nothing ever happened, and it's great. But for me, I don't think I could not compare myself. So I think probably anything but that.
Well, and I, it's funny you say that, because I grew up, and it's not losing a limb, but I grew up playing violin very seriously, practicing 2-3 hours a day plus orchestra rehearsals. It wasn't necessarily fun. It was intense, that it was always about making the next orchestra and so forth. And when I went back as an adult to kind of think about I want to get back into music, I miss it so much, I played bass guitar because violin was too personal, right? Like, it is something you have to kind of put aside and say, what can I have fun with now? What can I enjoy? And how do I, not everything has to be a goal. It's how it feels, and, and what you can create now. So that's such an awesome example of shifting something you love into something new.
Well, and Sid got out of the wheelchair, so you would think, like, wow, above the knee amputee, that could be wheelchair time, and for Sydney, she was like, hey, everybody, I don't have this burning pain. I have other pain, but that thing's gone. The burning pain's gone. And I'm not going to be in the wheelchair anymore. And so watching her recovery, watching her in PT, watching her doing weights, and watching her begin the process of walking again and getting the prosthesis and getting it fitted and getting fit. Watching Sydney get fit has been amazing. And then racing, all of a sudden she's racing a bicycle unbelievably on what looked like rough terrain. I mean, it looked nutty to me a little bit. I mean, I don't know if I would do it. It looked dangerous, but it was just awesome to see that. And I love hearing the goal about making the Paralympics. I'm going to pray about that for you, that you could achieve it and that you find something that brings you joy, that you feel like practicing all the time to get to that level, but just getting up every day and doing it, when so many of us don't get up and pursue our dreams, and we have way fewer obstacles than you do. We're not pursuing fitness. We're not pursuing those goals. And we're making up reasons, maybe, to be stopped, instead of like taking your example and not letting any reason stop us.
Yeah. So I have a question. And, when we talk about perseverance, and Jen's gone through the loss of her mother this year, and that takes perseverance. I just had a woman on my team lose her mother this morning, which is really hard. So I would love to know the story of how you got to know Jen's mom and how you came together, because that's something else that, we manifest, and everybody kind of leaves, an impression on each other. So I'd love to hear that story.
Jen, I loved your mom, and I love her so much. She was amazing. She was one of my first real friends when I came to the Church of the Holy Spirit, and we would sit together in the back for choir. And Jen's mom was one of the funniest people I've ever met, but she was also going through health issues. And she would just say, this, this bench in the back is for people with health issues. Everyone else go to the front. And it was just, I saw some of the things that Della had to go through physically. And, there were days that I wasn't feeling well enough to go to church, but, I knew Della was going to try to be there. So I was going to go try to be there. And we really did have this really close bond. She took me out to like a family breakfast after church one day, and I got to hang with all the grandkids, and it was just, she was so welcoming and open. And I think we need people like that in our lives, the people who just naturally include everyone. And for me, that was Della. And, she'd say, oh, well, have you met so-and-so? And she'd give me backstories on people because I was a newbie, I didn't know things, but she knew everything. And we both shared, we were almost stubborn to a point when it came to our health issues. And I learned so much from her on like, hey, yes, I've got XYZ going on, but I'm not going to let it define me. I'm still going to go to church. I'm still going to have a relationship with God. And at that point, I was having a hard time with my faith. Like, why is this happening? And she was instrumental, I would say, in helping me accept that and not be mad at God. And I just love your mom so much. I miss her.
So beautiful. And it just shows how, every single person leaves their mark and impression, and how, you can think that what you do for somebody else doesn't matter. It's not that you do it, that you talk, you meet, you're seen. And the fact that you had that bond together and that gave you inspiration. And I think for so many that need to persevere through hard times, whether that's in business, whether that's family, whether that's health, finding those people that you can look to for inspiration is so important. And and taking all those little pieces of people with you. And so that's just a beautiful story, and I'm so happy that you shared it.
And it's a story. My mom, if she was nothing else, was unconditional. She didn't lay down conditions, and she didn't judge a book by its cover. And she believed every person had some sort of, value and message and contribution that they could make to her and that she could make to them. And she didn't care who they were, or, if they just, crawled out of an alley and stood up, from sleeping there. My mother would hug them and, and have a meal with them and learn from them and share her own wisdom. She didn't care. And she loved Sydney because Sydney loved her, and because they shared this bond of health challenges. They also shared a tremendous love of music and a desire to be loved by and to love God, and so many other things, and Mom's love for Sydney made me love Sydney before I knew her, because that's how my mom's, love was enough for everybody. And so anyway, I just, but I myself have watched Sydney, and I am inspired daily by it, by what you're up to. And not just because you've had health issues, not because you're an amputee. That's not, we could take those things away, and what you've accomplished, going away to school, getting your degree, being in communications, trying to go after some form of higher level of physical activity, maintaining music, writing songs, and recording them. All of that, it's just all of that by itself is leadership lunch chat worthy. Well, and then you add the obstacles and you're like.
Well, and the definition of leadership is not a title. It's your influence. And the influence, Jen, your mom's had on your life and the people around her, and the influence you are having, Sydney, is leadership. And so, we are so proud to have had you on today to inspire others that may have the title of leader, but, this shows you find, people get inspired by action, by motivation, and by watching someone persevere. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
And Sid, if there's a way people could follow you or reach you, or is there some way they could support you? In terms of like, I know I voted for you at times and things. If there's something right now that people could do, or ways they could continue to have the conversation that would be comfortable for you, share them now, or you can also give them to Caroline and we'll put them in any social media posts. Because I'm sure people are going to be like, hey, I want to be inspired by Sydney more than just through this leadership lunch chat.
Of course. So the best way to keep up with me and everything I'm doing, and I've realized I've got a lot going on, like that I need to write down because I'll forget, but it would be through my Instagram account, Sydney M87. And I love when people ask me questions. My DMs are open. I get a lot of questions from people who say they have relatives who have gone through something similar and they want to know how to relate to them, or what could they possibly be going through. And I'm not an expert on these things, but I am someone going through it. And I get questions from people who are disabled and people who aren't disabled. And I try to expand my platform to let people know that, one, you're not alone, and two, these things, they can happen and you can still move forward with it. And so yes, Instagram would be the best way to keep up with me.
Yeah. And moving forward and live a powerful, influential, inspirational life. That's what you're doing. And I will continue to pray for you, and I will continue to stay in communication and be inspired by you. And I will help you any way that I can at any time. So just say the word and we will assist for sure. Thank you so much for being a guest on Leadership Lunch Chat today. Thank you, Amy, for being here and witnessing Sydney's greatness with me. And thanks everybody else for participating. We really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your Friday, super weekend.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.